All right? So the thinkers make decisions by stepping away from the situation and looking at things with an objective view. All right? Whereas feelers go into the situation. They want to figure out how are things working. Stepping into it and kind of making sure everybody's okay with it. Okay, empathetic view. Does that make sense? Those are, copying stuff down. You have enough down, you might, okay, go to the next slide. Okay. All right, so this activity, and yes, we are going to get you up right away, but I want you to think about this first before you get up, all right? If you're a coach of a Little League sports team, you and your team just won the right to compete in the finals, you have 22 kids, only 15 can go. All right, I'm going to break you up into groups. Now, I think I told you the new groups are, I think you're split 10 and 10. So I think there should be 5 feelers in each, 5 thinkers in each, all right? And come up with, what would you do?
So T's in the back.
T's are in the back,
T's in the back.
T's in the back, F's in the front. 5 and 5, please, everybody.
Good enough. You got it. You got it.
I like planning Amy for the other ones. You'll notice I
Okay, so I would like somebody to volunteer as a spokesperson to talk about what went on in each of the flips. Who wants to be the spokesperson for this feeler up here? Christy? They want you to be the spokesperson. Is that? Okay. All right. So Christy, what was the thought process? How did you come up with your list?
Because it says it's only about the money. So then you just fundraise and get everybody to go.
Okay.
They're a team, like the whole team.
Everybody hear that? Because it was easy solution. You just make enough money to have everybody go. Did you talk about what if it wasn't about the money and that couldn't do? Anybody?
Yeah, we started to talk about that.
Yeah, we did.
Like if it was a cap on the number of people or whatever.
Okay.
So then we're like, well, it should be people that are like good team players. Like they have the skill set, but they have the right attitude.
Okay.
Like,
They made all the practices.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you hear a theme there? Okay. All right. Thank you so much. Thank you, Christy. Okay. Who's the spokesperson for this one?
Except the F's, there was the F's that was
Who wants to be a spokesperson up here? Volunteer? Oh, okay. Thanks, Victoria. All right.
face out.
Yeah. She wants you to face out. Okay.
Okay, so we were just focusing on, we thought that you had to decide who can go. So we thought who deserves it, somebody said highest batting average.
But he was an imposter.
Yeah, I was just going to say, typically, who would you think would be a feeler or a thinker that would say the highest batting average? Thinker. It was more a thinker type of thing, but that's okay. See, we've used both sides. We do both. Okay, good. What else?
And who's worked the hardest?
Yep.
Who has shown the most improvement?
Okay, all right.
Who's been to most practices that put in and tried and
Okay, all
And
right.
then we thought, well, maybe we could try to raise more money.
There you go, same thing, yep.
And then seniority, who's been on the team the longest and deserves to go.
Great. Thank you so much. Good, good, good. So I have to admit, I've seen a couple people in the audience roll their eyes to some of these, okay? I don't want to say who, but I mean, you kind of go, is that a ridiculous way to look at things? And that's the barrier, all right? That we have a judgment already. We have a preconceived idea already of what's going on. And so doesn't make them bad or wrong, folks. Because let's talk about the thinkers. Who's a spokesperson for the one back there? Okay, Dave, thanks.
Junior.
Best position tryouts. We need 3 catchers, you need 4 catchers, break both, A and B, see if you can stay back. Who's available to go? Who wants to go? And then who made practices?
Okay. And I assume that you thought the stats was probably the #1 way that you would pick the team. Is that a correct assumption? Okay. And what happens as they go down the list of other criteria? They get softer. They get more open to, let's think about the other people. I'm sorry, bad word. Thank you. That was a wrong word to say. But you can see that, okay? And that's what happens. That is what happens. All right, good. Who's the spokesperson for the last one? Thanks, Dave.
All right, so we pretty much followed the same logic. We make a team roster, pick the best players, compete for positions if necessary. Parents' financial support would be important. A lottery would be the last option for position alternates. In the end, realizing it was about money, we said we have a fundraiser so everybody can go.
Okay, can you see the same pattern on that one? All right? If you can't do it by statistics and by the roster and best players alone, you're going to start looking at other ways, which is wonderful. All right? It's wonderful. So you can see how could there be, if two coaches, if one was a thinker, one was a feeler, and they were strong in their preference, could you see the challenge that they might have in picking who those kids were going to be? Which 7 are going to stay home? Is this a real live situation? Has this ever happened? Does this ever really happen? Absolutely. Maybe not with Little League and the coaches and all that, but yeah. Yeah, right. Similar situations. So what questions do you have on that? Anybody feel like ambivalent about it? Like now do you, a few people I think said that they were kind of towards the midpoint of this one. I'm here to say that nobody's really exactly in the middle. Situations might drive you one way or another, but I think if you dig deep enough to your true preference, you'll figure out which side, maybe just a little bit, okay? But what side you really lean towards. So good. All right, so are you surprised that Ajax is T dominant? No. Not at all, okay? And what does that mean? Okay, what does that mean for you? Fs, how can you, what does it mean, first of all, about being a T dominant organization? What for Fs? Are you taken seriously? No. I'm not gonna talk to Amy because she might start crying. Okay? Does that ever happen? Not really that you start crying, but that you get, I mean, it's kind of looked down at like, well, she's just one of those girls that has all those emotions coming, So, but as Lauren and I have been saying all day, there's benefits to both sides. I mean, a strong T can be as difficult, if not more difficult, to deal with than a strong F. All right? So think about that. How about Fs? How can Ts approach you with feedback? Remember, we're still giving and receiving feedback section here. Okay, so if you're a feeler, what do you think a thinker could do to approach you so you can hear it? Any thoughts on that? Yeah, go ahead, Dave.
I think as a thinker, you got to recognize that from looking at these, feelers want to hear about their effort and their improvement and their want to, right? Yes. So you want to approach those things.
Yes, great answer, and absolutely,
really
absolutely.
insightful.
Yeah, mm-hmm. Very good. How about vice versa? How can thinkers? How can you? Can feelers approach you? What do feelers have to do to approach you in order to give you feedback?
Better bring the facts.
Come with the facts. Yep. Just come with the facts. Don't bother saying, well, I really, really think you've been doing a really good job and I really like the things that you've been doing, but just come in and say, this is what's going on. This is what I see. All right? Make sense? Excellent. All right. So, logical thinking, one way, straightforward path, details, facts, thinker. How it impact others? What is the overall impact to the team? How is the person going to feel? Okay, what's going on inside them? What else is going on in their world? Okay, feeler. Those are the kinds of things to think about when you're dealing with the feeler. Good.
All right, so we're moving into the fourth continuum under this section of giving and receiving feedback, which is the JP. And for this one, on this slide, I just like to refer you to the images on the screen. And it kind of says a lot about the differences between how J's and P's function.
And she's talking about these images, not these images.
Yeah, sorry. Thank goodness Amy's here. Yeah. So P's, can any of you relate to the spontaneous? Can any of you relate to if you're working on a project, how that P looks? Yeah. So J's, methodical, organized, planned. P's will have a high-level plan, but they're happy to veer off that plan if new information comes in, or if they get called in a different direction, or if they get an idea.
Detour.
So detour, yeah. Shiny, yeah. So the difference really comes up a lot around managing projects. J's, they get a project, they start on the project. Let's get it done. So it's handed to them, boom, they're on it, they're moving. Physically, you can see things happening. P's are more likely to think about it for a bit. They're going to ponder it, they're going to percolate on it. You may not see things happening yet, but they're working on it here, okay? See the difference between the last minute. J's don't like those last minute detours, those derails, those like, oh my, going off the track, especially if it's last minute. They get stressed, anxious by that. P's, they might get stressed too, but at the same time they get energized by getting things done at the deadline. Now Dave, over the years, now I think Dave, you report to Christy, right? Over the years you've reported to Mark Minnick. So Minnick's not caring where you are. There's some bosses that are going to be watching, is that person where they should be in this project? Do you see what I mean? And that's where we have to start watching with the J and the P. Dave's got it, but some folks are not going to be comfortable with him waiting to the end. And that's where we have to just let people kind of do their thing, be their own, bring their own gifts to the table, so to speak. Make a plan, follow the plan, delays decisions until, that's the other biggie is decision. So one piece is the projects, again, different pace, and J's can get anxious if they don't see results. P's can feel micromanaged if they know they got it and somebody else is going, how's it going? Are you getting anything done? What's going on? What's happening? Have you made progress? Can you kind of see that dichotomy and where that can come in? And then the last one is, J's really like closure. So they really like to make a decision and move on. P's are like, I don't want to make the decision until I know I've got all the information and I know it's the right decision. So P's are comfortable. One is not good and one is not bad. The difference is P's are comfortable prolonging a decision, which can be a problem at work. Do you see between the two? I mean, I don't mean that the P is a problem or the J is a problem. I mean, the difference can create issues if we're not aware of what's at the root of it. So it's just something to talk about. It's just something to talk about. This is kind of an easy way to talk about this stuff, is type. So I think the diagrams are good. I mean, that might be a little bit of an exaggeration, the squiggly thing. I don't know if mine are quite that squiggly, but I will go off in a different direction if I get an idea. Because we do have those, remember the lens. We have a bias because how we are, and we think the way we are is great, right? Because we can see all the advantages of it. So we can't immediately see what's great about doing it the other way. Sometimes, because J's are so eager to make a decision, it's not always the best decision because they don't have all the information yet. They're so eager to move on that they haven't considered all the options. P's will look at all the options. So when you've looked at all the options, you have more information. They'll look at more data, more information will come in. They may call more people and go, what do you think about this? Or here's a scenario, well, let me get your take on this. So by the time they do get that decision made, it's really well thought out. Ideally, you're talking it through and you're finding ways to make it work. So there was a person, I used to teach time management, and I would teach it under somebody else. It was her company, and I was basically a subcontractor. And she was ISTJ. I am not ISTJ. And so what we came up with, because she would be getting nervous that I wasn't producing, she wasn't seeing results of what I was working on. So what we came up with is, say if our deadline is, August 31st, we set up milestones. In 2 weeks, this piece of the project is going to be completed, and we're going to compare notes. Then in 2 more weeks, this phase is going to be completed, and we're going to compare notes. So we had two different ways of going at it. They were both valid, and we had to find a way to work together to where she wasn't freaking out because she knew I was working on it, and I didn't feel micromanaged. So we'll just go through the exercises and see what you think. But it's like, again, nothing is this black and white. But the J's strength is methodical, staying on plan. The P's strength is being able to be flexible and go off the plan if it's a better idea. So that's, again, it's not quite that simple, but that's the most easiest way to boil it down in terms of the strengths. Alrighty, so this should be interesting. We're going to do the same thing, 2 groups.
And you split 10 and 10 on this one.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so we're going to have 5 and 5 J's in the back. Basically going to answer the questions that are up on the screen. So we have 30 days to complete the project. It'll take about 7 days to actually do it. How will y'all go at it?
When do you start? We start the first day.
Okay.
When do you finish? We figure we'll push it all the way out. Finish 2 days before the due date.
Okay. So you
I
still
mean,
got a little
we may have
time.
it done quite before that, but we won't have plenty of time to think about it. Scenarios.
Okay.
How will you organize the project to meet the 30-day deadline? Gather info, run through scenarios, and schedule meetings.
Okay.
What are your strengths of your style? Giving us final views on everything, running through all the scenarios.
Okay, yeah, so good. That's a good strength that you captured there. Excellent. Okay, running through all the scenarios. So you see why in the world that y'all live in, maybe not you guys specifically, but in construction, it's good to be able to run through all the scenarios. It's like looking ahead to head off what's coming. So let's see if our J's are going to go at this any differently. Can someone from the flip chart by the fireplace talk to us?
It's a detailed plan, so.
Yes, J's would have a more detailed plan generally for how to execute something. All right, so our P's, this P group would start on day 1. This one would just be planning for the first 7 days. So can we imagine if we had J's and P's on the same team and they never had this conversation where they'd be like, what the heck is the matter with these people? Both are going to be thinking this, right? Okay, excellent. Last J.
Ultimate goal, I think where we were leading to was, well, we know where we're going to start. Let's figure out where we have to finish, and then we will come back to the beginning, work through it, which sounds like it's jumping around, but it's still pretty linear and logical in the way that I must be done by this point, so now we can build our schedule going through it, give ourselves a little bit of breather time in between if we need to do that, find what fits it best in everyone's schedule. You know, maybe running 7 days through a project's not going to work for everyone, so we need to come into some sort of agreement.
Right, because of other commitments.
So,
How about the deadlines? How's the deadlines lining up? I'm sorry, when you're going to submit it. What did you put?
we decided that absolutely have to be done 7 days before the job, so we were going to set it by that, and then
Okay.
we were going to build the schedule
Okay.
based off of that, give ourselves maybe a couple days a week.
Okay, and then we have some teams who would submit it the last day.
No,
So-
absolutely not.
How's our, let's forget for just a minute about feedback. Let's just talk work. What can we do about this to where we could, if we bring it back to the beginning, and we talked about the lens, and we think our way is the best, right? Because we just do, because that's the way people are. How could we not just tolerate the differences, how could we leverage the differences if we had a team that was working together, had a 7-day project for 30 days? What could we do?
The J's, the things that are already concrete, set in stone, that you already know are not going to change.
Smart.
And have them work on that, and the things that are fluid and still up in the air, you give to the days.
That's impressive. That was super impressive, yeah. Yeah. Look out, Christy. Look out, Christy. Yeah, that was well done. Yeah, so it's just a matter of talking about it and figuring out how we're going to go at this in a way. The word that I like to use, it sounds a little bit weird in a work setting, is how are we going to honor both of our approaches? Like, we don't want to squish somebody or like, no, your way doesn't work. We want to leverage, enhance, uplift. So how can we best utilize the strengths of everybody involved? All right, good job. Again, let's decide, let's explore. It's a big difference. It's a big difference. All right, and we are rolling into same set of stuff, just in conflict. Yeah, you're good, you're good.
Okay, so a lot of what we're going to talk about for the next 45 minutes to an hour is going to be basically putting together what we've already talked about, but in the area of resolving conflict. Okay, the two things that you were highlighted in the poll that Lauren took was basically the feedback piece and resolving conflict. How many of you would like to know how to better resolve conflict? I would. Okay, so I'm going to give you some tips. First of all, though, I'm going to talk to you about how does conflict start, all right? This diagram might look like, oh my gosh, there's just too much stuff there. Let's just take the top line, all right? And picture this. And if you don't like the way this is pictured, let me talk about it another way. You are on one end, somebody else is at the other end. I have this in a linear, like you're conversing with the other person. There's stress involved because you're not seeing eye to eye. You're coming up with some kind of result. What kind of result are you coming up with in that case? Not a good one, right? Because the stress on both parts, all right? So what I'm going to say is, in extreme cases, and even in not extreme, think of it as a power struggle. Somebody's trying to get their point across, there's barriers. Somebody's trying to get their point across, there's barriers. Does that make sense, that top part? All right? If you go down to the power struggle line, what happens as things get heightened, and correct me if you don't agree, that the odds are one person will be louder, more aggressive, more kind of in your face, and as that happens, another side is going to shut down. Okay? It depends on hierarchy maybe of the people, or relationship of the people. It might be, what in terms of Myers-Briggs, who might you think might be in a more of aggressive and more of a non-assertive? Who would be the aggressive? Maybe, in what we've talked about so far. Say it again? Ease. Not always, but let's just say that, okay? Because what is the personality of an E? Thinking out loud, getting the words out, getting energy from the outside world. So who do you think might be on the receiving end of the non-assertive end? The I's. All right, shut down. I'm going to internalize and say, my barriers are, I'm talking to myself and saying, this person is just being a you-know-what. Okay? So that's the power struggle line. Basically, the person that's loud and aggressive is saying, your needs don't count. I'm talking, I'm in charge, I'm the one making my point. All right? And the person that's withdrawn, the message they're kind of sending is, my needs don't count because obviously they're not even going to ask me, what my opinion is. Can you picture yourself in a situation, maybe not that extreme, but have you ever had an opportunity to be in a conversation like that or in a conflict like that? Yes? I want you to think about that as we go through this particular session, all right? Because it doesn't all relate to Myers-Briggs, but there are some key points here that I hope you walk away with, that next time you find you're in conflict, you can say, I remember Amy talking about something about that in that Myers-Briggs workshop, all right? The whole concept that we're going to talk about is this thing I'm going to call the awareness circle. And the awareness circle is merely saying, I want to know where that other person's coming from. I want to shut down my barriers, my roadblocks, so they can hear me, not to agree with me, but to hear what I'm saying. And I want to shut down my barriers so I can hear what they're saying. Because do you all agree what we've talked about so far is we do have these barriers, black and white thinking, judging, rehearsing our responses, coming up with a solution before you even know what the problem is, and we do all that. I don't care what we all do, we're all human, okay? So the whole objective is to shut down your barriers, open up your ears, and kind of say, okay, what message does this person really want to say to me? And once you get that, we went through those 6 questions, like you want to clarify what I'm hearing you say, Sandy, is that correct? Get confirmation, all right? Do you see how that logically might work? Okay. So being in the awareness circle, the aggressive person says, hey, I'm going to take a step back. I'm going to put down my barriers. And they're going to say, your needs count. I'm going to support what you're saying. We should have these flipped, okay, at the bottom there. And then the assert says, my needs count. So you just want to end up walking away from the conflict saying, we each have our points. You may not agree at the end, but you're going to acknowledge that each person has their own viewpoint. And that's really what it's all about, okay? So this whole section is about resolving conflict. Does this model make sense to everybody? Is there anything about this that you're like, Amy, I just don't get what you're saying with my needs count, your needs count? All right? This would be the ideal way to end a conflict. So now what we're going to do is we're going to tie it into what goes on with Myers-Briggs and your personality type, okay? All right. The first thing that has to happen, and now you are all in the know, you have to be aware of the struggle. All right? You have to be aware of the struggle. Like, okay, I know now that I have my barriers, they have their barriers, and if we continue with those barriers, nothing's going to get resolved. All right? So the first thing, you have to be the bigger person and say, all right, I'm shutting my barriers down. I'm going to wait and see what they have to say. Okay, so where have you seen these before? We talked about with giving and receiving feedback. It's what this whole thing is made about, or what this whole thing is about. All right, these barriers. Anything new there that you just don't get? Like, can you relate to any one of these more than another one? Or somebody that you feel never listens to you? Or they're always interrupting you? Does somebody constantly interrupt you, and does that just like tick you off? What do you do about it? And you start getting louder, and then what happens? All right? Or black and white thinking, the all or nothing, defensive. What do you mean I blah, 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 blah? So this is just taking that giving and receiving feedback, the roadblocks, the barriers we talked about why sometimes that's not effective, and taking it to the point of getting it into a conflict, what's going to happen there. All right? So this is key, folks. All right? And you have to suspend and choose to listen. You have to suspend your own stuff. Even though you may be right, and you may know you're right, you still have to say there's 2 sides to this discussion or this argument. All right? So you have to suspend your own mental and physical activity enough to truly receive what the other person is saying. Does that make sense? Is that hard to do? Yes, especially if it's a real heated type of discussion. All right? So you have to suspend your own mental and emotional charge, and then you have to choose to listen fully. All right? That means, as I'm suspending my own mental and emotional stuff, I want to really get the message of what you're telling me. Is that hard? Yeah, absolutely, that's hard. So suspending your own mental and emotional to truly receive their message, okay? And if you're doing that, I guarantee if you do that, and if they take a breath and then you say, okay, Justin, are you done? Is there anything else? And they say, no, there's more. I want to tell you also, 2 weeks ago when you did X, Y, and you say, okay, I'm still suspending my own mental and emotional. In the meantime, the roadblocks are kind of coming into my way. Then I'm going to go, okay, I'm going to listen to it. And then I say, is that it? And he goes, yeah, that's it. And then I say, are you willing to hear what I have to say about that now? So in order to come up with a response, you have to really understand what's being said, right? Okay? So suspending your own mental and emotional charge and listening fully without a judgment. And this isn't the same judgment as the PJ. This is a judgment of, I think that's a stupid thing to say. That's the kind of judgment I'm talking about. All right? You with me? All right, so this is the active listening. This is the thing that we've talked about before, okay? So you listen with the intent to understand, and then you clarify, like Dan said. Okay, what I'm hearing you say is that you don't like the way that I put together my report. And they say, yeah. And then you say, can you tell me more, all right? And they say, yeah, and besides that, you don't only put it together poorly, but you don't even give me what I'm looking for because you're not giving me the right data. So you play back and you say, so the data I've been giving you now for three weeks, isn't that what you're looking for? And they're saying, yeah. And you want to say, well, why haven't you told me before this? But you don't. You say, okay. Is there anything else? Okay, so you paraphrase. Everybody know what paraphrasing is, right? It's putting something in your own words. You think you heard it? Well, let me tell you, this is what I heard. Is this the correct way to, are we on the same page here? All right? Acknowledge their perspective. I get what you're saying. State your perspective. Are you now ready to suspend your own stuff to hear what I'm saying? And you can't control that. You just can't control that. If they do, great. If they don't, maybe that's that you go round two or say, well, we need to agree to disagree and we'll get together again tomorrow. All right? Right there. Resolve, agree to disagree, and then you summarize. All right? And this isn't about coming up with a happy, smiley, okay, we're both on the same page, let's walk away happy. This might be just that. You think this, I think that. Is this where you're coming from? Do I have you correct? Do you have me correct? Now, is there some way we can agree or come up with a solution? Remember, it's resolving conflict. Is there some way we could come to an agreement on this? All right? Okay, so that's when you say, we're going to do some active listening now. I'm really going to open up. I'm really going to listen to what you have to say. You're going to listen, open up what I have to say. All right? And this is the next page in your handbook. All right? So everybody's needs counts. Your needs count, my needs count. We may not be coming from the same place. We may not have an agreement, but you're both in the awareness circle and the charge has been taken out. You want to take the charge out of that discussion. All right? Now, what does this have to do with Myers-Briggs? All right? What does it have to do? Anybody see a parallel here? Does it help to know first of all, does it help to know what your type is? Absolutely. At least you know I'm going to withdraw because that's what I do, because that's who I am. And so as they come at me, what do I need to do? I either need to assert myself or just let them diffuse themselves and come back and come up with a solution at some point. All right? So what I want you to do is go to pages 22 and 23 in your report. I'd like you to take a look at that and kind of peruse it for your type. Because there's definitely patterns, depending on what your type is, on how you're going to handle conflict. I'm going to pass the baton back over to Lauren. She's going to talk about this EI exercise with respect to conflict resolution. You're on, girl.
All righty. And there we go. Okay, so we're looking at the same scales again. And someone tell me, why are we repeating ourselves?
You need to hear it, see it, write it.
Yeah. Again, it's just learning theory. Like, we need to hear the same thing, sometimes a different way, but the repetition is on purpose. We really didn't run out of things to talk about, so we just decided to, regurgitate the same stuff. It really is for a purpose. But you'll notice that the bullets are different, and the bullets are geared specifically to conflict resolution and the blocks that can tend to be for each of the preferences. So you guys recognize any of these in yourselves or in others? Yeah. So I'm not going to read through, they're pretty straightforward. I'm not going to read what's already up there. But I think, again, it's about understanding that if somebody is doing these things, it's not too necessarily designed to annoy you. It's just they're different than you are. It may feel like they're designed to annoy you, but it's probably not their intention. They're probably just being how they are. So as E's, we just want to be aware of these things. We may tend to interrupt. E's are comfortable oftentimes interrupting each other. but that doesn't mean that's okay for everybody, because I's don't really generally like that, talking over people. They'll tend to just be quiet, right? So, and I's, keep in mind that you may appear disinterested even if you're not engaging outwardly. So again, E's, keep in mind that's not I's intention. I's, keep in mind you may need to physically engage more so that that person knows you're listening. So for this one, here's a little more individual reading. This is in your orange book. And instead of going to the flip charts, you're going to talk about it at your table again. So read in your orange book. You'll see at the bottom section of page 7, it specifically speaks to conflict. The bottom of page 7 is specifically to the I's and E's. So read that, and then at your table, answer these questions together. Hopefully every table's got a mix of I's and E's.
That's, you guys are all I's. Okay, all right. So I will, they're all I's. So maybe you can kind of think about, if, as an E, what you know about E's. Just put yourself in the position where it says like, how do you think you can modify your communication to be effective with E's? And then we'll listen to what other people say about the E's.
Yeah, so you would read this. You would read this to say, okay, these are some ways that I could speak to an E, to where it would be better received, to where they could hear me.
And then just kind of say, is there anything else? Just very neutrally, not charged, emotionally charged at all. And they say, yeah, and by the way, Kara, you just never blah, 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 blah. And then you go, okay, is there anything else?
That's how I would probably be, right there.
And that's okay, but once they say, no, there's nothing else, you can say, are you willing to hear what I have to say now? Would you be able to do that?
That would be hard for me.
Yeah. So that would be a behavior that I would say, try it out in a very non-threatening environment, like a child or a spouse or somebody that you feel, or a friend that you feel comfortable with. Does that make sense?
It does.
It's hard. It's a behavior change.
That's the thing. And that's why I say to the E's, don't just barge into people's offices, because not everybody likes that.
Go when I can get back to doing it.
Yeah. Your J's wanting to crank it out and move on to the next thing. Yeah. But yeah, that's why that thing that says on the bottom right, when possible, provide written information that people can consider in their own time. That's what we were referring to earlier in the day.
Yeah.
That sometimes people who are I want to reflect first. Let me think this through. Don't just...
This is good with you.